Hi and welcome to Mondraker TV. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at 5 different e-bike motor systems to help you identify the features that might suit you best as a rider. Now there's a lot of technology crammed into these different systems and it can feel a little bit overwhelming and even intimidating trying to understand what you need. So let us help you clear things up a bit. Okay, so behind me we have 5 different systems. So over here to my right you have the Bosch Performance CX line, seriously popular option on the market. Next up we have Shimano's EP801, that's the latest version of the Shimano system. Here we have the Bosch CX Race offering, serious contender that one. You might also notice we've got a drop-handled gravel bike over here. So this one's got a hub drive system from MAHLE on there, the X20. Now that's exceptional, you definitely need to learn about this. And then over the back here we have a lightweight. We have the TQ system on here, the HPR50 on the knee. It barely even registers as an e-bike, it's so different. Now each of these systems are completely different. They all have different offerings to you, they have different powers, they have different sized batteries, and they even have different intention from you as a rider. So whether you're a featherweight jockey looking for just that little bit extra to help you maximize your rides, or perhaps you're a heavy rider that needs the low-level grunt to really tackle those monster climbs, or you're the sort of tech-savvy rider that just wants all the latest technology on the bike, each of these has a place. Now it's really important to not make the mistake that many people can make when looking at motors in just looking at the range and the battery size, because there are far more things with all of these motor systems and others on the market to consider to get the right one for you. So we're going to break them down one by one and show you what they can do. Okay, so in front of me here we have the Crafty. Now this bike is running the Bosch system, and in particular it's the Bosch Performance Line CX motor system on here, and it's the Gen 4, so the 4th generation of that. Now we like to use the biggest battery on here. It's got the 750 watt integrated battery in that down tube there, and it's running the Smart system on here. So I'll explain a bit more about that in a minute. But what you get on the handlebars here is you get the Kiox display unit, you get a wireless remote here, which is really nice and small, just to cycle through the modes and cycle through the settings on the computer display there. And you've also got your power display and readout on the top tube. Now this system kicks out 85 Newton meters of torque, and it works extremely well at both low and high cadences. But the key thing with the Bosch system is the implementation of that power. Now, despite the number of torque, like the 85 Newton meters, being the same as some others on the market, this is extremely powerful and it can be really relied on to pull you up the steepest of hills. Okay, so let's get into a few of the deeper stats about this system. So you can expect to get 340% support through this system, and it peaks at 600 watt in terms of output. The motor weight itself is 2.9 kilograms, and charge time with this battery in there, you can expect approximately 50% battery charge in 2 hours or a full charge in 6 hours. Okay, and in terms of range, well, I think between all mountain bikes here, it doesn't matter what the motor manufacturers will spec. It's going to be very different depending on what you want to ride compared to what I want to ride and how anyone else wants to ride, okay? So unlike our road riding friends who ride with firm tyres on firm terrain and are more subject to just the wind, for example, mountain bikes are subject to many different things that will affect the battery life and the range on them. So how you ride, how aggressively you ride. If you run soft tyre pressure, you're going to use more battery. Firm pressure, you're going to use less battery. If the ground is soft, more battery. The wind, the gradient, all these sorts of things. But Bosch have got this really cool calculator on their website, so you can go on there and try and figure out the battery size, if there's an option of picking battery sizes, or you can maximize on what you can get from the existing battery on your bike. Now I input the details of my body weight, the sort of riding that I might want to do, and it estimated I could get anywhere between 50 kilometers and 150 kilometers from that 750 watt hour battery. But take that with a pinch of salt, because it does vary on all of the elements and the conditions that you ride in. But check the calculator out. It's actually a really cool thing, and it will definitely help you get an understanding of what you can get on your e-bike. Okay, now here's the cool bit. So this has the smart system built in, which means when you're using this system in conjunction with the Flow app, you get over-the-air updates. So it means the software is always going to be maximized. You're always going to have the best and the most optimum software on your bike. Now the app also enables you to track your ride, and it enables you to use it as a secondary display should you want to remove that display on your bike. It's a real genius approach to the way you want to work with the bike. Now, in terms of settings, with this unit on here, you have 4 major settings. You have Eco, you have Tour Plus, you have EMTB, and you have Turbo. Now, the modes are kind of split between dynamic and linear. So the linear modes are Eco and Turbo. And what that really means is you're going to get that amount of assistance no matter how hard you're pedaling. Whereas the other 2 modes, the Tour Plus and the EMTB, you could call those dynamic modes. So they're going to be adjusting the amount of power you get depending on how much you put in. Simply put, the more you put in, the more you get out. Using the app, you can tune the amount of torque that you want to receive in each of those settings. You can have the pedal sensitivity. There's a number of different things that you can have to get the system dialed in for you. And the final feature that the Bosch system has that might sound very cool to a lot of you is it has a digital motor lock built into the system. Now, okay, so fair enough, you might not want to take a bike like this around a town centre, but if you're out for a ride and you stop in for lunch or stop in for a coffee perhaps, you can digitally lock that motor just for an additional peace of mind. Or more importantly, you can stop your friends wanting to ride your bike and wearing out your battery. Okay, so in front of me here we have the Crusher, and this bike uses the Shimano EP801. So the bike shares a pretty similar outline, it has a pretty similar intention to what we just looked at, but the motor has very different feeling and it offers some different tech in here as well. So housed in that down tube, you have a 720 watt-hour battery, and you've got a nice little controller to the left of the bar here where you can cycle through the settings and the modes available to you, which you can also see on the display here. Now, unlike the Kiox display that's much bigger and has a lot more features in full color on it, this display from Shimano is a lot more compact, which some people tend to prefer. You know, it just shows you what you need to see when you're riding. Now, like the Bosch system, this also has 85 Newton meters of torque, and it also has a little bit of overrun on there, so a bit of extended boost available to you. But the way that it delivers it is very different to the Bosch, whereas the Bosch feels like it really wants to keep on pulling you, and just that's the general feel of the bike. The Shimano system feels much more natural. It really is key. So yes, the Shimano system offers you the same amount of torque, and it's a very powerful system. It's just a lot more natural in the way that it delivers it. Okay, so let's get into some of the finer details with the EP801 system. So remember how I said the Bosch system offered 340% support? Well, this gives you 400% support. Now the peak power is the same at 600%. The torque, already mentioned that, is the same at 85 Newton meters, but the motor on this is actually quite a bit lighter. So whereas the Bosch weighed 2.9 kilograms, this weighs 2.7 kilograms, making it the lightest full-powered motor available to you. Now, in addition to all these, you have the Shimano eTube app. Just like the Bosch Flow app, you've got the ability to fine-tune settings on the bike, you've got the ability to update software, and a number of other really cool features. Now, the modes on this bike are known as the basic settings. Think of these as presets. So when you turn the bike on for the first time, you will see that it has Eco, Trail, and Boost. Now, these are dynamic modes, all of them. And this means the more you put in, the more you get out. It's a really natural feeling system with the way that it works. But if you want to customize those, you can go in via the app, and you have the option of having up to 15 different settings to be able to fine-tune between them. Now, when you do this with the fine-tuning, it will actually turn those modes into more linear settings, but because you have the ability to tweak almost every parameter, it's quite phenomenal what you can get out of this system if you're willing to put a bit of time in with that tuning. Now, the last really cool thing about this is being a Shimano system, you've got the ability to have full integration with Shimano everything, as you can see on this particular model. So yep, you've got the Shimano brakes, you've got the Shimano Di2 shifting on here. And what that enables you to have is both free shift and auto shift. Now these are two very cool things, and they are serious toys to play with as a rider, be it learning e-biking for the first time or being an experienced rider and trying to just take their riding to the next level. So free shift enables you to change gear when you're not pedaling. So part of the whole e-bike system is you have a free wheel at the front as well as at the back, so the chain will always be moving. And what happens is with the free shift is you can change gear and the motor will actually revolve the drivetrain around while your pedals stay static. So it means you can always be in the correct gear. Combine that though with auto shift, where it will automatically change at a certain cadence, which you can set and you can change those parameters. It means you can effectively get on the bike and go and hammer, and you can take those things out of the equation. It really is fascinating tech. We'll be doing a deeper dive into that in another video here on Mondraker TV, so stay tuned for that one. Okay, so when it comes to getting out on the trail on the EP801, at low speeds and low cadence, you'd be hard pushed to notice the difference between this and the Bosch because they're both offering realistically the same amount of power. But when you start getting the cranks down, that's when things start feeling different. The Bosch unquestionably is an immensely powerful system, and although on paper this offers the same, it feels a lot more natural. It doesn't feel quite as jerky as the Bosch that really does want to surge you forwards. This feels much more normal. Now, if you come from a regular mountain biking background and you have a fair cadence with the way that you pedal, this will feel really natural to you and you will enjoy riding a bike like this. And when it comes to the actual motor and living with it on the trail, the Shimano system is incredibly quiet. So the Bosch emits quite a high-pitched whir that admittedly you do get used to these things, you tune out of, but the Shimano is a quieter operator. Now, one of the key things with the Shimano system is the fact that it has a clutch unit on the inside. And as that disengages, you can get a little bit of noise on rougher trails, but it's also the benefit of the system because this is what enables it to feel so good when you exceed the power band as such, or the maximum speed. You can just keep on pedaling and it's not really that much of an issue. Like I said, it's a really natural system to use. Okay, on to the mighty Bosch CX race system. Now, from the outside, this is very similar to that Gen 4 Performance CX system that we've already looked at. It uses the same kiosk display, it uses the same style controllers, it uses the same flow app to adjust all the parameters of it, and it even uses the same 750 watt-hour battery that's integrated into the down tube. The motor unit, at a glance, looks similar until you see that the actual casing is grey instead of black. But really, that is where the similarities end because this is the most powerful and the most aggressive motor on the market. Now, when it comes to numbers on this, remember that on the Shimano system, you had 400% support available to you, and on the other Bosch system, you had 340%, yet they felt very similar. This offers you 400% support, but that's a Bosch 400% support, so you know what that's going to feel like by comparison. Now, it's the same torque, 85 Newton meters, the same 600 watt peak power, but the motor on this has shaved off some weight. Not quite as light as the Shimano, but it's 2.75 kilos. So sitting in between the 2.7 Shimano and the 2.9 regular Bosch operation there. Interestingly though, there's two major things with this in the way that it operates. There's a line in the sand. We'll get to that in a second, and let's just talk about the modes on here. So you have 4 modes available to you, just like you did on the other one, except you lose the eco mode and you gain the race mode. So you have the Tour Plus mode, the EMTB, the Turbo, and then race. You do have the option in the custom settings to put eco back on there. Not really sure why you would with a race motor. Surely on a bike like this, with a motor like this, all you want to do is attack the worst, gnarliest climbs possible. And if that sounds like you, then, well, yeah, this is what you really want. But you need to know a couple of things about this. So when you're riding this motor, it's a near instant pickup on this. So unlike all of the other systems on the market, the second you touch that crank, you can get full power straight away. And it's even possible to ride around just ratcheting the crank and the motor will give you that support to move forwards. It also has overrun, or extended boost as Bosch call it, but it's got 2 meters of overrun on this. So the other Bosch system had a meter, which is an incredible feature to have, but still you need to manage it correctly. This has got a whopping 2 meters. So really, if you have got the technical skill to pilot a bike like this up the worst terrain, then that motor is going to enable you to get up stuff that you previously couldn't get up. So what we're talking about here is the sort of things you see on EWS style power stages, or perhaps if you're inspired by Tony Boo and motorcycle trials, the sort of stuff that you're seeing riders like that approaching on their e-bikes. Really, this is for the serious experienced riders out there. It's not for casual users. Of course, anyone can get on any bike, but it is so aggressive that actually you might find it difficult to use. The other thing with this system is it's a limited edition option as well. So if you do fancy having the current best of the absolute extreme power that you can get, then you better get cracking and get one. Okay, on to something a little bit different then. This is the TQ HPR50. Now, as you can see in front of me, it's a bike that barely resembles an e-bike because of the fact the motor is so tiny. So obviously the motor is housed in the same place as it is on all the other bikes, but look at it, it's tiny. And it also enables, because of the fact it has a smaller battery, a tiny down tube on the bike as well. Now on the top tube you have a minimal display that goes along with that minimal size motor, and you have just the bare minimum of controller there on the handlebar. The display will give you literally the bare minimum. The battery cell life on there, it will tell you your range, and it'll even tell you what your power input is versus the motor. That's about it. That is the beauty of the system. Now before we go into the numbers, I just want to emphasize the size of the motor here by showing you the motor compared to a Bosch unit. So we've got a Bosch unit here, and this is the TQ. So literally it's half the size, and that is the beauty of this system. So in the down tube here is a removable 360 watt hour battery. You also have the option of having a 160 watt hour range extender that plugs into the charge port, and you also can charge them both together via that range extender battery. Very cool stuff. So you've got a 300 watt maximum peak power on this, and it offers you 200% support, which I think is quite surprising given the fact it's literally half the size of everything else out there on the market. And it offers you 50 Newton meters of torque, which again, I think is really impressive considering just how compact this is. Okay, and obviously having a tiny compact little motor there, it weighs substantially less than the Shimano, which was the lightest of the full powers at 2.7 kilograms. This weighs just 1.84 kilograms. Now charge time for the main battery, you're looking at about an hour and a half to get 80% or 2.5 hours to get the full charge. Now range, well, you've got to take range with a pinch of salt, as I've already mentioned to you, because of the fact that different surface conditions, the way that you rely on the motor. But TQ say you can eke 40 to 50 kilometers out of a single charge if it's in the optimum conditions and you're managing the battery on that yourself. Now, as far as settings go, you get 3 main settings. You get an eco, you get a mid, and you get a high. Each of these have independent torque, power delivery, and other features available to you to tune on the app. And the last thing that you really need to know about this is it doesn't have any overrun. Think about that for a minute. Other systems give you power when you stop pedaling. This one doesn't. However, it's actually really a good thing. I'm going to get onto that in a sec. So the TQ system out on the trail, well, it's not even comparable to the other systems. So the first thing you're going to notice is just how light the bikes can be that house the TQ HPR50 system. It's enabled us to build the Neat, which is a sub 18 kilogram e-bike, which just sounds frankly absurd compared to how heavy the full power options are. Now the system itself feels incredibly natural, and despite the fact you've got 300 watt peak power and 200% assistance, it's the combination of that power, that assistance, the 50 Newton meters of torque, and the light bike that really does make this thing come to life. It feels much more like just riding a regular enduro bike at the fittest you've ever been, and then just giving you a little helping hand when you really need it. It's, of course, not as powerful and not quite as capable on the steepest, longest climbs as the full power bikes. But the beauty of this is how normal and natural it feels to ride. Now, earlier on, I said that it doesn't have any overrun. Now, some people might think that's not good, but it's irrelevant on this because the harmonic pin ring system, that's the HPR in the name, has no friction to it. So when you exceed the motor's top power, you effectively don't notice it. So having no overrun, in my eyes, is a perfect scenario on this because it accentuates how natural that motor feels There's no overrun, there's no surging and lurching with the power that you can get from the bigger, more powerful systems. And it just genuinely feels like riding a normal bike. To the point that sometimes you have to need to actually cycle through the settings to see if it's giving you assistance. It's a brilliant system. Something else that adds to how natural the bike feels, like I said, like an enduro bike, is the fact it's got a very slim Q factor that's only really achievable because of the size of the motor. So the Q factor on this, basically the distance that your cranks are together, it feels just like riding a normal bike. When you're riding a full power e-bike, you have the spacing that you associate with downhill bikes and bigger bikes. And when you're riding with that power, you won't notice it too much. But when you're riding a lighter, faster, more responsive bike with your feet closer together, it just feels like a regular mountain bike. And that to me is one of the absolute key things. Now, if the 360 watt-hour battery puts you off, you can also have the range extenders, which is 160 watt-hour. That plugs in and you get full power from plugging this in. But you also have the little secret weapon up the pocket. So if you were to take the battery out, the main battery, you can still run the bike on full power just on the range extender. And what that means is because of the size of the range extender, on some airlines you can fly with them. That makes it just such a versatile bike. Okay, and our last system in this video. Yep, okay, so it's a gravel bike, but the point is it's an e-bike that can get you to the top of some monster climbs. And this one is using the X20 hub drive system by MAHLE. Now, it's important to note this hub drive, it's not a mid-mounted system with the motor system based around the bottom bracket. The advantage of that on a bike like this is the bike can be extremely light because the weight is just in that rear hub. In fact, the weight of the frame is not far off a lot of gravel bikes out there. Okay, so housed in the down tube is a 350 watt-hour battery. You also have the ability to run it with a range extender offering an additional 171 watt-hour, which means on a bike like this, you can seriously cover some terrain. Now you've got 55 Newton meters of torque available to you, bearing in mind that the bike is exceptionally light as well, so you really can power up some terrain with the 200% assistance and 250 max output on it. Now there are a couple of cool things to reference on this as well. Now the power isn't based on the cadence and the way that you ride, it's based on your power as an input. So you could be turning over the gears just nice and comfortable, but as long as you're putting power down, you're going to get power out of the bike. Like I said, it's not reliant on the cadence that you see on some of the full power systems. And there's also another huge benefit with this. So yes, there's no overrun, but you are not going to notice the difference when you go over the power of the motor. In fact, you can run this completely off and you will not notice any friction. You're just turning a hub around. It's a very cool system and it just requires thinking a little bit differently. Okay, so there we have it. 5 completely different e-bike systems, each with their own merits and each suitable for different styles of off-road rider and off-road riding. Now it's important to say, no matter what system you're choosing to look at, don't just pick it on the motor system alone, because it's possible to have a great ride no matter what, but also there's other important factors to consider when buying your off-road bike. You want to be looking at things like the componentry on the bike, things like the geometry of the bike, and of course, things like the suspension travel if you're looking at EMTBs. Now, I've just spoken about some of the options out there in the market that are ones we've chosen to spec on our bikes here at Mondraker. But bear in mind, everything I've said today applies to all of the systems on the market. So hopefully this video will have given you some insight on what you should be looking for to get your ideal e-bike motor system. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments down there what you look for in an e-bike motor. What are your ideal things and what things don't you look for? Let us know in the comments down there and we'll come back to you. Thanks for watching the video and we'll see you in another one soon. Take care.